Well, the first thing here is that I've put all the spacing of the bars at 200 mil. The reason for this is that let's say you tie the top mat and you tie the bottom mat, and then you tie in your legs, say your first line of legs at your far face. Then you have to reach down through the mat to tie it. You have to tie it by hand. Even none of the guns will reach in there. So you have to tie all that by hand. Very difficult to tie through steel that's at 100 mil. Almost impossible if it's at 100 mil centers. But if it's at 200 mil centers, if it's at 150 mil centers, it's very difficult, And then same if you're tying a wall, and sometimes you might need to tie through the wall onto the back face. But if it's at 200 mil, that's the preferred thing for steel fixtures. Also, it's easier to get if you have the bars at 200 mil, you have a bit of room to work. Because you need to tie the top mat, and you need to tie the bottom mat and then the top mat before you put in your starters. And you need to get the starters through. You have a 200 mil by 200 mil gap. That's a lot more room to work with. 150 mil by 150 mil is not very much, and then there's going to be chairs and everything else in there as well. So, and then the other thing then is that, let's say I did a job here a couple of years ago. It was 100 ton of steel, and generally speaking, at the time I was charging about €400 a ton. But when we looked at the drawing, so the builder put in the price he thought I would charge. When we looked at the drawing, the engineer had put the steel, 12 mil steel at 100 mil centers, instead of, if it had been at 200 mil, it would have been 16 mil steel at 200 mil centers. And so the price, instead of being, I couldn't do it for 40, I couldn't do it for 40,000, which would have been the price. So it was actually 60,000. I just said to the builder, it's not my fault, I said, go back to the engineer and just tell him change it. A few hours work would change it. So I went back to the engineer, and the engineer refused to change it. And for no reason at all, So that was €20,000 worth of work we did for no reason. Another occasion then, the steel was all, it was 100 mil. Sorry, it was 16 mil, not a big tank. 16 mil, I had 100 mil centers. My foreman at the time, he just said to the engineer, why the hell did you do that? And he said, why didn't you put 25 mil at 200 centers? It was not even half the work, half the work. The engineer said, the last time we couldn't get the steel yard didn't have 25 mil. So that's no way to run a job, So you tell them it's a big civil engineering job. So, but it made so much work for us. You just think of the starter bars. You have twice as many starter bars, twice as much tying, everything. You're handling more steel. So it costs about 50% more per ton to fix 12 mil than 16 mil. That's just the way it is. Now the next thing then, and I'm just going to focus on there now, is the bottom mat, how it's tied. The best way to do it is with one U-bar with two short legs. We call them bob and bobs. You can see here the bottom leg coming up here, and then another U-bar with two short legs coming down from the top. That way you can fix the bottom mat, and then you can put some chairs. I haven't detailed the chairs here, you'd have to sort that out with your steel fixer. And then you tie the top mat. You don't have to tie if you use U-bars coming from either side, U-bars with long legs, then you have to tie everything down through the mat. Plus you have to put in your U-bars first and pull everything from the end. It just makes a lot more work. Now another thing then I'm going to show you here now is the starter bars. From my experience, you can put the starter bars, you can put the leg going any way you want. These ones, they're all going in the one direction because it's over towards the side of the base. You put your starter bars at bottom 3. The starter bars have to be tied if you want to get them right and in the right place, coming out of the concrete in the right place, they have to be tied to the top mat. If you detail them as bottom one, the bottommost bar, then what will happen then is you'll have to tie them with the bottom mat before you put in the top mat. Now, generally speaking, so your line is going to be set maybe 2 inches above the bottom mat. Now, this, generally speaking, the bars come and they're not 90 degrees, they're 92 degrees or they're 95 degrees. So by the time it goes to the top mat, it's all kinked off, you know. So you have to tie them through the top mat. So you have to tie the bottom mat, then tie the top mat, then put down a line, a bar as your line, keeping whatever 50mm cover in, and then you tie your U bar, your L bar into that. So they have to be bottom three. Don't ever detail them bottom one. And then the other thing then is that these legs come, and some of them are like just crazy stuff, 1.5 meters long. How the hell are you going to get that through the, say, 200mm by 200mm gap? And plus you have a bar down as your line, so your gap is probably only half that. Like, so like, there's no reason for that. That's just crazy nonsense. To just keep the legs as short as you can. Now I understand that if it's 16mm, you probably want the leg maybe 500 or 600 long. If it's 20mm, maybe you could go to 700 or something like that. But for 10mm leg, 400 is enough. Less than 400mm, less than 400mm is not good, you know, because you still need to be able to tie it to 2 bars, you know. So you need to tie it to the bottom mat, you know. So you need a couple of places to tie it. If you make it less than 400mm, it's not really going to work very well. Now, as regards the length of the L bars, give yourself a little extra. You probably mightn't be on site or whatever. You don't know how the contractor is going to pour this. They're supposed to pour a kicker, you know. So if they do pour a kicker, say kicker's like a concrete. Say it's the first 100mm or 150mm of the wall. They pour that when they're pouring the base. It acts as a guide for the shutters. And so when you're putting in your starter bar, you need to have the depth of the slab. You need to have enough splice sticking out of the pour, and you also need to have 150mm for this kicker if they use that. Now, they may not use that, in which case you need to look up at the top here. What they may do is they may just drill bars outside their shutters, and they may not use a kicker, in which case instead of your vertical bar, you know, your long bar, straight bar that's going up the face of the wall, it's better just to keep that 150mm short. And then, so that like here, no, this is done as if there wasn't a kicker and the bar is just sitting on the ground. You know, when the guy goes to put his bar and it's just sitting on the ground. Here, look. There, now in the centre of the screen. The straight bar that's coming down. And when you follow that up then, so if there is no kicker and it's sitting on the ground, then the L bar on the top, the U bar on the top, it's better to have that 150mm longer than what you need. So, because the steel fixer, you know, there's a lot of guys, he might not be there. He'd just tell guys, oh, throw up that wall there. They'll just stand it on the ground. And then if you don't allow extra splice up there, you won't have the splice on your U-bar. It's just a small thing, but now there's other things then that you don't consider, but you have to realize all these U-bars, they're all bent off a coil. Nowadays they're all bent off a coil. So once you go longer than a meter, let's say with a 10 or 12mm bar, especially if they're bending it from the end of the coil, the bar is going to be all twisted out of shape, you know. So like, better to keep your U-bars as short as you can, you know. So like, now a very simple thing here is that people get great ideas and, you know, they think, Oh yeah. Oh, what I'll do now is I'll connect this L bar, and I'll just connect it. I'll just have one bar, and instead of having a short L, I'll do a long L going all the way up to the top here, you know. Wow, great idea, you know. Wow, it's, you know, like I've saved the splice on the steel, you know. That would be great. Like. But then when you go to fix it, you know, you've got tons of steel tied up in the air above your head. You know, let's say you have a 30-meter stretch and you've got all this up steel, and then you try to brace it. And even if you brace it in all ways and it's so safe, all it needs is a touch of a machine, you know, and the whole thing will come down on top of your head, you know. And there's guys working under that, and it's just a hazard, like. So it's just crazy. So just put in your starter, then do a straight bar as your vertical bar. Don't ever put them together. I've seen that so many times. The other thing then is a U-bar, you know. People think, oh yeah, I'll use a U-bar as a starter. It actually goes in quite quickly, you know, and it's not the worst thing. But like, if you use a U-bar as a starter, then it's exactly the right width, you know. So if you're slightly out, you know, and you could be 10 mil out, you know, the line that they give you is not always right. And then, so you're going to have 40 cover, and then you might put it in maybe 5 mil in the wrong place. You have 35 cover. On the far side, then you have extra cover. Whereas like what the steel fixer normally will do, you know, working with the engineer, he'll just say, look, I'll give it a small bit extra cover, 5 or 10 mil, just in case the line is off. Everybody's happy. Then you can give the starter 5 or 10 mil, 5 mil extra cover, and then whereas you can move the starter, you can give him 5 mil extra cover, you can give him 55 instead of 50. But with a U-bar, you can't do that, you know. And that's not working with the engineer. I'm not saying to do that, but like I just said, generally speaking, that's what's done in a job, and it works. And then I'm just trying to think of anything else here now. The other thing then is that, let me see, in the corners, you know, guys do a set of 3 bars. You back face to back face, front face to back face, and front face to back face. 3 L bars. That's very hard. It's very slow, you know. It's not a thing you can do. One man can find it very hard to do that on his own, especially when you're hanging off the corner of a scaffold somewhere. U-bars are much better. So you can either do U-bars or you can do L-bars. Just don't do the L-bars, just do the U-bars. So much easier, like, for the steel fixer. He can work on his own then. And the other thing is, if there's 2 guys working together, you're working at the pace of the slowest guy, you know. So just use U-bars, don't use the set of 3 L-bars. It's not like one is right and one is wrong, they're both right. Use U-bars only in the corners. Simple thing then is that when you're detailing the U-bars, you need the width of the wall plus the splice, and just a little bit more then, because when the guy is fixing the wall, his lacers they may wander in and out 50 mil or even 100 mil. Just give it an extra 50 mil or 60 mil length, so go the width of the wall, the splice, and give it another 100 mil. The other thing then is that these lacers, 6 meters, don't ever go longer than 6 meters. If you detail longer bars, let's say 12 meters long, they just, for one thing anyway, they twist, you know. And when the 12-meter bale gets twisted, it's a couple of ton in that. It could be an hour untwisting it. And then the other thing then is that if it's very difficult to get these things delivered, a lot of jobs are inside in the city or really awkward spots, you know. So a 12-meter long bar, you need a crane, and you need a forklift. Don't do it, like. You need a crane, and it's going to be messy with a forklift anyway. Someone could get hurt. You need a crane, and plus you need to get an articulated truck into the place. And a lot of times you just can't do that. what the steel yard will do is they'll cut the bars into 6 meters. They won't even question, they won't even ask, and they'll send all those bars, the 6 meter bars. Now they won't put in the splices, so you'll have to cut splices from the bars. So that's more labour. That's a guy cutting splice bars, and then it all sounds grand then, and then till you find you're in a chemical plant and you need to get permits to use the console. Plus you're going to put a guy for the day cutting 2 meter bars, and there's not a lot of guys who'll do that these days, that's kind of, everyone will shy away from that. People are inclined to shy away from work, and then a steel fixer won't want to be doing that all day long. It's very difficult to get someone to do a job like that, cut steel all day long with a console hard going. And the other option then is to order a load of splice bars from the steel yard. That's going to be probably waiting 3 days, so the whole job is held up, like, so you're going to be cutting, and then you're going to run out of discs, you're going to run out of petrol, you're going to have hot permits. So just don't do it, just get them 6 meters is enough. Another thing to consider is that it takes 2 men to carry a 12-meter bar, and those 2 men will be working at the pace of the slower guy, so you're holding up work. The other thing then, L bars, a lot of problems are caused by, in recent years, a lot of steel is bent from a coil of steel. So it's just obviously there's a twist in the coil, so when you'd say make an L bar, a 7-meter bar with an L bar with an L on the end, then they're going to obviously bend that off a coil, because it's very hard to manoeuvre that in the bending yard. So it's going to turn out bent like a banana, And even L bars with 3 meters long, they're going to be bent out of shape as well. So the best thing is keep your L bars as short as possible. And then the other thing then, when you're detailing lasers, some jobs you just see the lasers on the outside of the wall, Like steel fixers have a lot of fast ways of tying a wall, some very clever tricks. None of them work with the lasers on the outside of the wall. Put the lasers on the inside of the wall. The other thing then is that a lot of times on a job, let's say the schedule doesn't work to suit the steel fixer. Let's say he's tied a wall and he's waiting for that to be fixed, and he has to tie back onto that before the shutters will have to be released. So he has no work. No, if your bars are 12 meters long, he can't work ahead. Like, let's say he can prefab walls 6 meters long, stack them 10 high, but he can't do that with 12-meter long bars, because you won't be able to lift them safely and drop them in. So 6-meter bars are always the best. The other thing then is, let's say you decide to do a long U-bar. Sometimes maybe it can't be avoided. Ask them to cut the long U-bar, to bend it from straight steel. Now, some of the steel yards will be crying, but there's another way around it. You can cut a straight bar from a coil. That'll take a good bit of the bend out of it, and then you can bend your U-bar from that. The other thing then is that you're a professional, why don't you do it right? Like, it just takes a little note on the bottom to say all straight bars must be cut from straight steel. Let's say recently there I did a job and the steel came for like a 5-meter long beam, 5-meter long beams. All the bars are in the shape of bananas, So I just told the contractor, I said, they have to go back, I can't make a straight beam from this. He said, no, the concrete's I have the concrete's coming, I have the pump ordered, and I said, okay, I'll make them, but you'll have to make them fit, like. So I made the beams. I was on price now, so I don't have time for messing around, so I just made them, and they were kind of banana shaped, and he had to kind of pin them, and then pin the other side, and then pull them back with a machine, and he had a couple of guys doing this all day, even just to get 1 or 2 beams done. Crazy. So like, it's very easy for you just to detail all straight bars must come from straight steel, because the steel yard will just spin them out off a coil and they'll come all bent and twisted. And that's, you can change that. Like, the other thing then is, that's about it, I think. There's a lot of other stuff as well, but like, the main rule really is that if you come up with a really good idea, and no one's come up with it before, you'll find out why it's not going to work when you go to do it, So if you're detailing a retaining wall, just do it in the format I've done for you here, We just need good drawings on site that are easy to fix. We don't need anything new. We don't need novelties or anything. People have been doing this for years and years. This is the system that works well. Please use this.